Hewitt Show.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. Hugh Hewitt in Orlando today at the annual meeting of the American Legislative Exchange Council, which I've been doing now for 3 years, and I am back and I'm very happy. I call it my easiest 2 days of broadcast all year long because all the smart people here are talking about what's going on in the laboratories of the state, including the leader of ALEC, Lisa Nelson, who is the CEO and chairman. Lisa, good to see you again. I guess you're not the chairman. You're the CEO.
I am the CEO.
And
the chairman is Demi Busada.
So Demi's going to be on sometime the next 2 days. Tell people who don't know what the American Legislative Exchange Council is.
Okay. The American Legislative Exchange Council is a 53-year-old organization that develops model policy for state legislators across the spectrum, from education to tax reform to health care to election integrity. We find the consensus between the private sector and the public sector and drive that model policy. If you go on our website at alec.org, you'll find over 1,000 model policies that give legislators across the country a roadmap for how to be competitive in their states.
Now, 53 years ago, who thought this up?
It was a product of kind of a lot of the Reagan kitchen cabinet, if you remember Henry Hyde.
Oh, yes.
And Ed
Illinois.
Fulner. And Ed Fulner, and a guy named Mark Rhodes, a guy named Alan Smith. They all got together in Chicago, believe it or not, because it was the easiest place for everybody across the country to fly to. They met in a hotel right by the airport and cooked up ALEC, and they wanted to be sure that it was this kind of magic blend of private sector and public sector getting together to create what hopefully would be job creation, legislation and policy around the country, economic development policy, and everything that would work and be competitive for the states.
Every week, people hear me talk about, with Jonathan Williams, who's your president chief economist, the rich states, poor states. The best metric I've seen in American politics and American public policy in 27 years of doing this show, because it actually measures who's doing good, who's doing bad, by income, by education, by employment, by mostly population. Now, that's a big tell. And over that period of time, I would bet the red state count has increased. There were probably more purple states 53 years ago, sort of mixed up.
Yeah.
But the self-selection has advanced now. Now, this is a nonpartisan organization, I always say it, but how many, you have 1,800 people expected at this gathering?
We have about 1,800 people expected in Orlando this week. And what you're talking about is the ALEC-Laffer Economic Index, which ranks states. Utah has ranked number one for 19 years, all 19 years. And it's because every year they sit down and they say, how can we keep this number one ranking? What do we need to do from a policy perspective to either fix our property rights taxes, do budget reform across the board? The other states are seeing this, taking note, and want to compete with Utah. And we've had a lot of states come in and move up the rankings. You talked about, more and more red states in the top 25, 28. I would say Arkansas has done very, very well. Arizona, a few years ago, passed that income tax bill to lower their tax rate to 2%. So under Doug Ducey, when he was governor, they did really well. Florida does well. Art Laffer is now a replant from California to Tennessee, and he has put Tennessee in that top ranking as well.
Now, the interesting thing, John has told me that school choice is not yet a factor in those rankings. But we talk about, and I will talk throughout the day today, about parental control. And the future First Lady of Florida today was talking about every dollar that's spent on a child should be directed by a parent. Now, that's the goal.
Absolutely.
But it's a very good, boy, she's dynamic.
She's
Ms.
wonderful.
Donalds.
Erica Donalds is a fabulous woman who saw that education freedom kind of movement come on during COVID and started thinking about, okay, if we pass these bills, and there's 18 states that have passed education freedom bills that align with that thinking of the dollars following the students and the parents having control. But if we pass that, then what are we going to do to make sure that there's a supply on the other end? So she started her own charter school companies, and there was a lot of people looking at this thinking, if there's a waiting list in Iowa, when Kim Reynolds passed her bill, when they flipped the switch and said you can start applying for these schools, they flipped that switch. They had a waiting list within, I think it was 6 hours. So you have to make sure that you've got the supply. And she started, I think it was Optima Foundation,
Yes.
which is creating schools around Florida. We just had a meeting with a company that's looking at moving to Florida with Erica since the lunch, and she was talking about if the company's going to move to Florida, would they consider having a school on their business campus, a charter school? Would they consider giving some space to the parents, because it's a hybrid workforce that they're looking at? And she thought, would they, be able to bring students in so that then you make that job a little more attractive?
When they elect Byron Donalds, I think they will, they're going to have a superstar first lady for school choice, which I think is a wonderful thing for the entire country, not just Florida. She'll be a cheerleader for that. Let's talk about the other end. I don't know that you metric in yet to rich states, poor states, voter registration, voter security issue. But I mentioned at lunch today, it's the #1 story in the United States, except for the war in Iran, is the New Jersey meltdown. Does the model policy that ALEC has proposed deal with that at the time of registration or vote or license issuance?
Well, so we're talking about a couple different things there. I should say that ALEC has many publications. So when you talk about rich states, poor states, and whether we're integrating in education freedom or election integrity, all of those are economic indicators, and they all are going to factor in. But what we've done is really drill down in the education space. So we have a separate publication that is an education freedom ranking, which is interesting. Florida, of course, no doubt, is #1. It's the one place where some of the states are beating
Everybody
Utah.
gets it.
That's
Yep.
right. On the election integrity front, we just started our last meeting about a year ago, I guess it's the anniversary, the Process and Procedures Task Force, to speak exactly to your point, to make sure that we've got the right policies in place. And you've seen a plethora of policies and legislation ever since the 2020 election going through to make sure that in the red states we've got protections on voter ID, protections on how are you counting the people, protections on the voter rolls and checking, are there, like in New Jersey, 6,800 people that are either dead or, not supposed to be on this or just immigrants who shouldn't be voting. So we're going to be looking at that this week, absolutely, to make sure that we've got the policies in place.
Now, I want to assure people there are 99 legislative chambers in the United States by state.
Yep.
Nebraska is the only unicameral state out there. A little fun fact to know and tell. Do you have representatives from everywhere? Does someone show up from everywhere? Even California?
Even California. I'm a native Californian, so I make it a point to not forget California. And the other thing that we do at ALEC is really think about, we are a 50-state organization. We try to get to all 50 states every year. It's usually around 38, 39, but we really try to do our policy briefings, get to know legislators, bring them in to be members of ALEC. The legislators themselves join ALEC. We have about a quarter of those 7,300 legislators from across the country. So it's a wonderful organization to join if you are interested in policy.
ALEC eye test, Hugh's ALEC eye test. It's younger. Gets younger every year.
Yeah.
But there are some stalwarts. There's some people who've been doing this for the 27 years I've been on the air. But I am impressed. It's a very young group of people. So do you think, just guessing, the demographic is falling in the state legislatures?
I think that's happening, but I will say that we've been intentional about that. We are working with an organization called Next Generation. And that is an organization that's really looking to identify. It's not a campaign organization, but it is identifying young people and saying, hey, if you're interested in running, can we teach you the policy of it? There's other organizations that can help you through the campaign and things like that. But if you really are thinking of going into public service, can we use the policy chops of ALEC, which you talk about all the time, and bring those young people, kind of give them their college education that they maybe didn't get, about the Constitution, about the Declaration, about the issues of the day, so that they can at least run or serve and be well educated.
A little commercial for ALEC. If you're a state legislator or you know someone out there. I met Matt Commons today, a young man from Indiana, serving his second term. There's part-time legislature, veteran, wonderful guy. You have Veteran Task Force. I didn't know that until today. Generally speaking, this is, I don't want to give your identity away, but you're a new person. You're from the Newt coaching tree.
I'm from Newt World, as we call it.
And Newt World is ideas driven and always has been. Does he show up here ever? Does he do ALEC stuff?
Newt I've been CEO for 11 years. He's probably been here 8 or 9 times.
I'm not
He's coming in December.
This is the kind of stuff.
He will be here in December. And we were talking earlier about, the thing that Newt always wants to look at is binary choices and giving politicians and or educators a binary choice.
Lisa Nelson, CEO of ALEC, ALEC.org. Thank you. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back from Orlando and the ALEC convention on the Hugh Hewitt Show.